In this video, we're going to be taking a look at this. It is a Sony TV from the 70s. It's still in the box. We're going to see if it works and maybe hook it up to a computer, because that's what you would have done if you grew up with computers in the 70s. It's coming up right now on the Retro Hack Shack. Welcome back to the channel for all of my 23,000 subscribers. I still can't believe it. I looked the other day and I was going to mention the fact that I had 20,000 subscribers, and when I looked there was 23. So you guys are awesome, even though I haven't put out a video in a while. So let's change that right now and take a look at this Sony TV. So I picked this up at VCF West. It was one of several things that I picked up to feature on the channel. And the reason I picked it up is, well, we'll go into that later, why I picked it up, but just take a look at this box. Number one, you don't usually see any TVs in the box from this era anymore, but I guess this one was small enough. Maybe someone packed it up, put it in their attic or whatever. Maybe even it wasn't used that much and it's a low hour set. That's what I'm hoping for. But this is a complete television package. It even has the styrofoam on the inside, which we'll see. But let's just take a look at this box first and see what we've got here. So this is a Sony television, solid state. So this was before Trinitron, not because of solid state, but it's before Trinitron just because of the year of the TV. And back then they were still advertising solid state TVs as an advantage over tube TVs. So this one has transistors in it and lots of electronic components, as opposed to the TVs that came out in the 50s and 60s, and probably early 70s as well, which are still using tubes. This also says all channel TV, and I believe that means VHF and UHF. So they just, instead of putting that on there, they said all channel, and the model number is TV-110U. And there's even a sticker here, which has some Japanese characters on it, and it has the model number up here again. So I don't know if that was common for Sony TVs back in the day or not. I guess it must have been. And also holding the box together, it does look like there was some tape here at some point that was taken off, but there's also this little string thing. If you haven't seen these before, they were often used on envelopes and stuff like that. And it's one way you could hold your boxes together. And I think this was probably more common in the Japanese market. And that way you could hold your box together. But let's go ahead and get this thing open. I do have to be a little careful because the box, just due to its age, the paper has dried out quite a bit and it is kind of prone to cracking and breaking. So I want to avoid that as much as possible. I wonder if, oh yeah, there we go. As I said, this thing it appears to be complete in box, has the antenna on it, which I don't know if, it seems like Sony especially used these orange tips on their antennas, I guess to let you know that it was there so you don't poke your eye out. And also in the bag, there is another antenna. This would be the UHF antenna, and this just has little hooks on the bottom, and you would hook this on the back. I'll show you that in a minute. That's for your UHF reception. And here we go. Let's just take a quick look at the set from the front. We've got a plastic cover. I don't believe that's glass. It seems more like plastic to me, and it's coming off just a bit. It maybe was held on with some tape up here on top, and that seems to be coming out just a little bit. Looking along the front panel here, down here we have what appears to be perhaps the UHF, because there's numbers in here. I don't know if you can see that. There's numbers behind there, so perhaps that's the UHF tuner or something. I'm not sure. Sometimes that's on the side. We'll find out in a minute. And then we have the Sony solid state there. And then on this side, we have what I assume is the volume and the, oh yeah, it was already on actually. So the on-off button, which is pull out, and then the volume control, and then the VHF channel selector, big clunky VHF channel selector. So that's really cool. Otherwise, pretty plain on the front. It's got a handle on top up here, and you can see, this isn't a trick of the camera, it actually is beveled in, I don't know, maybe like 5 degrees, 10 degrees on the side. It's beveled in on both sides here, and it kind of comes back like this. So the back is probably, I don't know, maybe an inch or two smaller than the front of the set. Now looking at this side, there's really nothing here except for down here in the corner there, it looks like what it would be a headphone jack down there in the corner so you could listen without bothering your neighbors. And on this side, we have a couple of knobs, looks like contrast and brightness, but that's all for this side. Now on the back here, we have a nice little cord wrap, looks like a fairly long cord, and the cord is intact. Thank you very much. So much nicer to have a set with the cord on it than what I usually find at eWaste, which is they cut those cords off. And then in back here, they have a switch for either rod antenna or external antenna. They have a VHF connection for an external, besides this one, an external VHF antenna and a UHF antenna. Next up, we have the label here, which usually has the date of manufacture on it, but I don't see it, at least in this little display I'm looking at in the camera. Maybe I'll be able to see that in editing if there's a year there. And then over here, there are a couple of knobs, one for, I believe this is for horizontal and vertical hold. And then down here, there are a couple more adjustment holes for height and vertical linearity. And then all the way down here on the bottom, it's going to be kind of difficult to see, but there is a switch down here, I believe, for charge. So perhaps this could be hooked up to either a battery, or perhaps that was for external power, one or the other, because there is another plug down here that looks like it would be a plug for an external battery. And yeah, that's about it for the back of the set. A couple other things I just saw that I forgot to mention. One is the model number here, 110. And the other thing is there is a knob down here, which is perhaps for fine-tune control, is what I'm assuming that's for. Now, when I picked this up, I asked and was told that it is working. It certainly is in beautiful condition. I haven't opened it up yet, but if there's any issues at all, we'll open it up. Maybe we'll do that anyway, just to take a look at what this set looks like inside. So I've got this thing plugged in. Let's just go ahead and go for broke, turn it on, and see if we get some static. Here we go. But before I get carried away with myself, I want to thank the sponsor of this episode, PCBWay. PCBWay offers low-cost, high-quality PCB manufacturing and a whole lot more. They offer flexible and rigid flexible PCBs. They offer surface mount assembly. They offer high-density PCBs with up to 60 layers. They offer aluminum PCBs, and they also offer custom metal and plastic parts that need to be CNC milled or 3D printed. So check out PCBWay for all your PCB manufacturing needs, and I thank them for their support of the Retro Hack Shack. Oh. Okay, so definitely not perfect. This pot here needs to have some lubrication done, and it is changing channel. It looks like this might be for the UHF or something. Maybe not, I don't know, but it looks like the tuner also is not perfect, because some of these channels are coming back with this kind of dark gray here, and then other ones are coming back with, I don't know, maybe they're just picking something different up here or not. Or so I think the tuner needs to be cleaned. I think the volume pot also needs to be cleaned. Sounds like I'm being mean there to it, but I'm really not. I just want to see if I can clean up those connections a little bit by moving the channel selector around. Let's go ahead and maybe try to hook up a signal to this and see if we get anything on the TV. Now you'll notice when I turn that off, or hopefully you notice when I turn that off, it really kind of came down to a fine point very quickly and disappeared, and that's good. That means that hopefully the circuitry inside is actually working really well. Sometimes there's bleed resistors that go bad and other things, and what you'll see on some of these old sets is they'll kind of collapse and they'll leave a dot in the middle for forever because, I don't know, maybe they're just not draining that voltage out quick enough or whatever, but there'll be a little dot left for a long time. My grandmother's TV, which was from like the 50s, was like that. You'd turn it off and it would go whoo, and then there'd be a dot there for about a minute after you turned it off. This one seems to collapse and disappear right away, so I take that as a good sign. Okay, so here we are. I've got a VCR hooked up. I've got a Sony VCR hooked up, appropriately enough, although this came out about 20 years after this TV. This is actually an SVHS, a professional SVHS video cassette recorder. I used something like this when I was getting my minor in broadcasting in college. This folds down actually, And of course, SVHS is higher quality. You can see you've got a nice big graphical display here, a jog wheel so you can queue up your cuts and edits. And then you could edit between two of these decks pretty easily. So you could synchronize them so that the cut happened at a certain time. It was all really very cool, but much overkill for this particular TV. I just have it because I could reach it and it's Sony. And so let's go ahead and turn on the TV and put in a tape and see what this looks like. So let's just go ahead and throw in Ronin from Blockbuster. That's right. You could win 11 million up to 75 million in cash winners. Ooh. Anyway, let's just go ahead and throw in this tape of Ronin. See what it looks like. Okay. It's actually working. So let's turn this down a little bit. Oh, this is the trailers before the video, the coming soon stuff. So let's get back on an image here. We can adjust some of this and see what it looks like. Here we go. So I'm just going to turn this down for now. And it's looking pretty good, but there is some wavy lines and stuff. Let's just go ahead and hit this fine tuning and see if that, oh yeah, there we go. Oh wow. That actually looks really good. You can see as I move the fine tuning that either tunes in or out the channel. So we'll set it somewhere in the middle like this. And yeah, for a black and white TV, that actually looks really, really good. There's a little bit of either underscan or overscan up here. So it looks like I need to move everything up a little bit. So let me see if I can adjust the controls and take care of that a little bit on the TV there. Looks like the contrast and brightness knobs are also a little bit dirty, and that's where some of those lines were coming in there because it's getting better as I adjust this. No, it's still there. All right, well, after fiddling with the controls for a little while, I actually switched to a different video source. This is an Atari 2600 in black and white. Of course, it's a black and white TV. I don't think that those lines across the top were coming from the TV. I think they were perhaps coming from the VCR itself. So perhaps there's some cleaning that I need to do on the VCR or something, because those lines now, at least with this video source, is gone. Okay, sure enough, here is a blooper reel, a Star Trek blooper reel that I showed on one of my other videos where I was testing out a VCR. So the quality of this is really bad. So don't judge the quality, but you'll notice that those white lines are gone. And that's because this is a bootleg copy of a bunch of stuff and it does not have any subtitles. So I think those white lines up there were clearly subtitles, which this TV does not at all know how to interpret. Well, it looks like everything is working with this set, but we do have some scratchy pots and those will have to be lubricated. And I doubt that I'm going to be able to reach those pots from the outside here. And so I'm going to have to take these off, take the knobs off and get in here and lubricate those pots. So I'm just going to take all the knobs off, get this thing apart, and then we'll take a look at what this thing looks like from the inside. Okay, I've got everything unscrewed. Now it should go without saying, hopefully at this point, if you've seen my channel, that you should not really work with anything with a CRT in it, including vintage computers that have CRTs in them, without knowing what you're doing, because there is high voltage in here. The tubes can stay charged with tens of thousands of volts, and you could get a nasty, nasty shock. Also, in this particular case with older stuff, there could very well be exposed capacitor leads in here, capacitors that can hold quite a high charge. And if you touch those capacitors with your bare skin, they will discharge into you. And that is also not a great thing. So yeah, just be doubly careful, especially with older equipment that could have exposed large caps. But let's go ahead and take this thing off. And I was expecting a wire right here that connected the antenna, which is up here on top of the screen here, but I was expecting the antenna to be connected right here with a wire that I would have to detach to get the whole thing off. But no, it actually does come off. And there was a screw that I wasn't sure what it did. And actually that screw, it makes the attachment for you for the antenna. When you screw that screw in right here, that actually connects the antenna where it needs to go. So by taking that screw out, I was able to just pull the whole lid off. So that's pretty cool. Now, hopefully I can do this without actually having to take the whole cord out. There is a little hole back there, but I have to pop that plastic piece out of the little hole, and I don't want to break it or anything, but this is looking pretty cool. On the back here, there is the charge switch. There's a primary fuse, it looks like right there. And potentially, I'm not sure what that is there actually. But here we have the connections for, that external. Here we have that connection for the external. Oh my word. Here we have that connection for the external battery, I guess, that you could connect to this thing. Let's go ahead and lift this up and turn it around. And very typical of Sony, even back in this era, they have all the wires and stuff routed around nicely around the chassis so that if you wanted to work on this particular board, for example, you could go ahead and unscrew it and then you could either fold it out or fold it down. Really nice feature that Sony seems to have always done, and I believe still does. They really take care so that these things can be serviced back when there was people to service sets like this. On the back here, we see the tube, that the back of the tube just kind of sticks out just a little bit. There is a very large capacitor. I would not want to touch that on the underside, as I was saying before. And then over on this side, we have the tuner and some of those pots that we need to access to take care of some of that scratchiness that we were seeing before. Now that I can see in here, one thing I wasn't able to adjust very well was the horizontal size and the vertical linearity, because, you know, I couldn't see what kind of screwdriver or what kind of non-conductive connector I would need to actually get in here and reach the controls that I can see now on the inside. So now that I have a little bit more access to this thing and a little bit more light, I will probably power this up and do a little fine tuning now that I can see where I'm sticking things on the inside of here and actually make sure that I can actually twiddle those knobs correctly. Other than that, there's not a whole lot to see. I don't want to bend this back on its chassis too far. I don't want to break anything, but there is a missing sticker here. As you can see, there was a sticker right there on top of the set, and I can see that down in inside here. So I'm going to go get some chopsticks and just take that sticker out so that it's not laying across the bottom board and all the wires and stuff in there. And this is where I get to put the 40 some odd years of using chopsticks, eating Asian food to the test. Wow, it's way down in there. There we go, no problem. There's the tube label, nothing really exciting, no real information on the label, just to be careful of implosion, etc., etc. And I think there was one more label right here, but I'm not seeing it anywhere inside the chassis, so that one must be long gone. And so far, most of these pots do have an access that I think I can get into one way or the other, and should be able to get a little bit of deoxit in here to clean these off with. So I've been able to get the two pots over here and the two pots in the back. The last one I need to get is the volume pot. And unfortunately, the volume is underneath this plastic right here, and there's absolutely no way I can get to it easily. So I'm going to have to see if I can remove the chassis here from the front part, and hopefully it'll just slide out a little bit, and that'll allow me to get in here and put a little bit of lubrication on the volume pot. That's the last one I need to get, and it's the hardest one to get to, unfortunately. All right, moment of truth. I think I can get this out. Carefully slide it back. Okay. Very close, but this ground nut here, which is connected and grounds the CRT, is actually keeping me from pulling this back far enough to get to that potentiometer. So I think that's it. I think that off. I think now, if I'm very careful, I can slide this back maybe. The bad news is there's no way for me to swing this out, because actually now what's catching is the anode cap. And yes, I could take the anode cap off, I could take all the grounding off, trying to not disturb this too much, but I think I've got this to the point where I can see the pot, and I think I can get some deoxit in there, and then hopefully by moving that around, that'll eliminate that scratching. And I won't have to necessarily take everything all apart, because being really careful at this point not to hurt this thing or ruin it, because it's in such good shape. All right, well, with the sweat pouring down my face, it's not even that hot out here. This plastic piece, I do want to see if I can get off. There's little tabs on the side here, And I think if I'm careful, I can get them off. And the reason I want to do that is because I want to clean off the tube. Now, it shouldn't have a whole lot of dust on it because it's had this protective plastic on it. But just in case, I want to get in there and do a nice thorough clean. And then I'll clean the plastic and put this back on. Yep, there we go. It's off and nothing is broken. Yay. And there was some dirt on there, so I'm really glad I actually took the opportunity to do this. So I do need to turn this on and just kind of reset things kind of to a point so that I can adjust the horizontal size and the vertical linearity with a known good tool that will fit now that I can see what I'm doing. Then I'll put everything back together and we'll see how this works with a vintage computer. Well, no more crackling on this pot. So that's good. And the contrast and brightness certainly are working better as well. All right, well, I said we were going to hook this thing up to a vintage computer, and I really meant it in this case, because this is my reproduction Apple I. So I've actually shown this off on the channel. In fact, I built it on the channel. I have a whole build series about the Apple I, which includes the history of the Apple I, and there's a playlist. I'll link to that at the end of the video. So once we're done here, you should see that pop up over here on the side, and you can just click on that to watch that playlist. I think you'll find it really interesting if you've ever contemplated building a reproduction Apple I yourself. But anyway, this is the Apple I, and this would be paired almost perfectly with this TV because Steve Jobs himself actually recommended a very similar TV to a dealer when they were asking what monitor that they should use with the Apple I back in the day. So very early on in Apple history, and there's a memo, I'll put it up on the screen now if I can find the picture, and he talks about, hey, you could use this Sony TV 115, which was the successor of this TV 110. So very similar. This one's just a little bit early in time. I have yet to find a Sony TV 115. If you have one that you're willing to donate to the channel, let me know because it would go perfectly with this Apple I. Now, before I was using a Sanyo monitor, which was also very common to use back in the day, but the Sanyo monitor that I have is a little bit late. So this TV is a little bit early. The Sanyo monitor I have is a little bit late. So I haven't quite found that perfect combination yet, but let's go ahead and hook up the Sony TV 110 and see what it looks like with the Apple I. Now, who knows what Steve Jobs was thinking actually when he came up with that. Maybe that was a TV he had laying around. I haven't heard the full story there, but let's just go ahead and see. Oh, look at that. This thing fits absolutely perfectly on top of the Apple I case that I built, this reproduction case, which was designed after one that I had seen online in several places. And I took a picture of one recently when I was at VCF West, where I got this TV. And it just, the case that I built, I'm really happy with it. It seems to have worked out perfectly. It looks homemade because it is homemade, which was how those cases were built back in the day. There was no actual official case for the Apple I. So I've got this one here. Now let's go ahead and hook this thing up. Let's go ahead and turn the TV. Oh, and we actually need a way to connect this. I almost connected the composite directly to the RF, which would have been a mistake. We need a way to connect the composite signal that's coming out of the Apple I into the RF signal that the, of course, standard TV expects. And that's why I've got this. Something else I found at e-waste at some point. Oops, upside down. Can't have that. All the electrons fall out. There we go. Radio Shack RF modulator. And it has on the back, it accepts composite input or S-video input and then outputs RF on channel 3 or 4. So we should be all set by using this RF modulator. Now we can now get the signal. And this is exactly the way that Steve Jobs recommended to connect the Apple I to the TV, was with an RF modulator. Of course, this one's quite a bit newer than what they would have used back in 1976, but it still will do the job. The RF modulator is on. The TV is on. Hopefully, when I turn this on, it gets a signal and gets something on the screen. I haven't actually turned on the Apple I in at least over a year, so let's see what happens. Hey, there we go. Nice. This is exactly what you should see on the Apple I if you've never seen one before. Not the rolling screen, though, so let's see if we can fix that. Apple I is a little bit more touchy in terms of the syncing of the screen. So, yep, we've got this flashing image. We've got these @ signs here. This is exactly what we should see. So I think we can do a reset. And I've got a reset here, but I'm still getting some of the blinking cursors, which isn't too abnormal for this machine. It is a little touchy. Let's see if we can clear up this picture now that we have a nice black screen. Let's see if we can see what that would look like as a monitor using this just for the Apple One. So yeah, so now I've got this, I've got the brightness turned down. We've just got the characters on the screen and it's looking really, really good. Okay, well, there were some duplicate characters around the screen. So there's something in the video circuit that either needed to warm up a little bit or whatever. It's working for the moment. So let's just go with this. But it looks like I'm going to have to go in and make sure that all the chips and things are seated properly and things, because I've carried this around to conventions and a lot of times things can kind of get loose in transit. So hopefully, and these are all using vintage parts. These aren't new parts on the inside. They're, for the most part, all vintage electronics and vintage ICs. So they can go bad. It happens. But anyway, it seems to be behaving for now. I've got this program typed in, which comes from the user manual. So this user manual here, this program right here, was what was put in here to be able to test the system out. And you type in this program and run it, and then it should print characters on the screen. So let's just go ahead and give it a look and see if it's going to work. I believe I just need to type R to run the program. Let's see. And there we go. It's typing away, and as you can see, this will end up filling up. So this basically just puts in or prints out to the screen each character, I believe, that the character generator in here is able to generate. So it just does all the characters and then starts over again in a loop. So there we go. It's actually working. There's no problem with it, and it looks great on this TV, this Sony TV 110. I'm so glad I found it at VCF West. Had a great time there. It was great to see some fans there as well. And I've got more stuff from VCF West that will appear on the channel in a future episode. So if you like my content, please go ahead and give it a like. Make sure you're subscribed. I know there's more of you out there that haven't subscribed yet. And most importantly, thanks to all my patrons. If you want to become a patron, go check out my Patreon page. And yeah, just thanks for all your support and supporting the channel over all these years. I really appreciate it. More videos are right over here for you to watch. And yeah, until next time, thanks for watching. We'll see you later.
End of line.